We are going to start. Phil is still on his way, but he says he's on his way, so he will soon arrive. I am Leah Sciortino. I am the founder and director of Junction, but today I will be a speaker at the panel. So we are honored to have here formerly unemployed, I think starting very soon, Jean-Luc Chua, and he was in charge for monitoring and evaluation of a USAID-funded program on trafficking. So I will give the word to him to introduce the speaker and the panel, and then we'll come back as a speaker very soon.
Thank you very much, Leah. Thank you very much. As Leah said, I am on the verge of being unemployed. So if you have any opportunities, I'll speak to you afterwards. Yeah, before I introduce the speakers, just very quickly. So today's session is called Navigating a Troubled Funding Landscape for Development in Southeast Asia. I want to begin by just saying that, you know, we've long heard promises of reform in development, and whoever's worked in development, I've heard calls for localization, more flexible funding, stronger support for grassroots, right? Instead of that, what we have right now is a sharp rightward turn that prioritizes political expediency over evidence-based impact. But personally, that matters a lot in our sector, and I see colleagues here from MEL as well. You know, and as a MEL and research practitioner in the counter-trafficking sector, I have to admit that things have never been perfect, right? The way we design, implement, evaluate programs can always improve. However, we are making headway, or we were making headway. So it is incredibly frustrating to see that just when we are about to make real progress, we are confronted with a stark reality. Funding decisions are no longer driven by whether programs actually achieve what they set out to achieve, but by whether or not they align with short-term political calculus of donor governments. But tonight, we are not just lamenting lost funding, or rather, we should not be simply lamenting lost funding. We're here to have a deep look at what these shifts in the recent USAID cuts tell us about the changing dynamics in our sector. More specifically, we have esteemed colleagues who will talk to us about how exactly USAID funding works, who gets left behind with these cuts, and importantly, how CSOs can actually navigate this incredibly challenging and very, very complex terrain. To do this, as I mentioned, we have 6 wonderful panelists, each bringing first-hand experience from different parts of civil society. Many of them will be familiar to you as you see them in the crowd, but nevertheless, I've been charged with introducing them. First and foremost, we have Rosalia Sciortino, who's looking a bit busy right now, organizing the crowd. She's an associate professor at Mahidol University and the founder director of this place where we're sitting here today, the Southeast Asia Junction, or the C Junction. We've passed roles at the IDRC, AUSAID, and the Rockefeller Foundation. Leah has been an instrumental voice in shaping development in civil society in Southeast Asia over the last couple of decades. On the panel today, we also have Phil Robertson Jr., who we are waiting for. He will arrive, I promise. Well, I can't promise, but I hope. He's a former Deputy Director of Human Rights Watch's Asia Division. Prior to joining Human Rights Watch in 2009, he worked for 15 years in Southeast Asia on human rights, labor rights, and specifically the protection of migrant workers. Phil now leads the Asia Human Rights and Labor Advocates Consultancy. To my left, immediately in the very flowery shirt, is Sara Piazzano, a former colleague of mine. I had a great privilege of working next to her for 3.5 years. Sara is a hugely experienced development practitioner, specializing in anti-human trafficking, migration, and gender-related initiatives across the Asia region. So Sara has spent the last decade with Winrock, and she was the chief of party of USAID-funded counter-trafficking and persons project in Bangladesh, Cambodia, and most recently for the regional Asia CTIP project, which I mentioned earlier. We have in the front row with glasses and in a suit to my left, Mr. Aung Zaw, who needs no introduction really and has traveled all the way from Chiang Mai, I believe, today. So thank you very much, Aung. He's the founder and editor-in-chief of the Irrawaddy. He launched this independent news agency in 1992 and has been a vital voice on Myanmar ever since, contributing to global and regional publications, including New York Times and the Bangkok Post. He has been recognized globally for his contributions to journalism. The fifth panelist we have is Emilie Palamy Pradichit, who is the founder and executive director of the Manushya Foundation, where she champions human rights through strategic litigation at the UN level. Emilie's work revolves around holding governments accountable and advocating for marginalized communities. Last but not least, we have Kaona Saowakun, better known as Toto, who is a trailblazing trans man activist and co-founder of the Isan Gender Diversity Network. He is the president of the International Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans, and Intersex Association, or better known as ILGA. So to begin today's discussion, I'd like to invite Leah as the first panelist. And does she get herself settled?
Okay, while we wait for the PowerPoint, I will say something about my presentation, which will focus more on the general context. So I will not focus specifically on USAID, but show, based also on an article I have written in 2023, that actually the process of shrinking finances, particularly for civil society in Southeast Asia, has started already quite some time ago. And I will show why I am making this claim that USAID is just the last in a series of repositioning of development aid agencies. So the context, we are all aware that what we are seeing today in terms of closing of development agency, negative values about development aid, etc., are closely related to the political context. Democracy is experiencing a global decline in donor as well as recipient country, meaning in Southeast Asia as well as in the Western world. The shrinking of civil space and dismissal of development aids affect and is affected by the availability of resources. The shrinking financial space started already in the late 90s, 2000, with reshaping of international development aid spending, paradigmatic shift in philanthropic giving, scarce appreciation of civil society and advocacy work among local donors, and greater control of funding stream of CSO by the government. This last I will not discuss today, but it's very important for this region. If we look at official development aid in 2023, at first sight, it looks as if there has been an increase. However, if you look at the percentage of gross national income, you will see that is still below what it was in the 80s. Moreover, if you examine those aids, you will see that the larger increase is because of humanitarian aid given to Ukraine in largest part, and to a lower level because of Gaza recently. It's also because of in-donor refugee costs, so costs that Europe and others spend within Europe. They are not spending abroad necessarily. And increase of concessional financial flows. So there are more loans than grants. So you see already how it's been changing development aid. only 5 countries have surpassed the United Nations recommended target of 0.7% of their national worth on ODA. And the one they are there is in green, in darker green. The USAID is indeed the largest donor, 64 billion of aid, but it's not in terms of percentage. The percentage is only 2.24. These are all official data from OECD, but of course, there are different data floating around. But it shows that it's not the main part of the incomes nor of the GDP of a country. Hostile AIDS landscape. It started actually in 2013, and we see very clearly the association of conservative government, at the time Stephen Harper of CDA. I was at the time with IDRC, and IDRC is semi-governmental organization in a sense because received funding from the Canadian Parliament, and already there was a lot of pressure about this issue, and SIDA was dismantled and integrated with the Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development Unit, now Global Affairs. At the least they kept development in the title. This was not the case with USAID. When USAID was dismantled in 2013, development totally disappeared from the title. Moreover, they didn't keep a separate department for development, but kind of segmented and divided all the stuff within the Foreign Affairs of Trade, basically destroying previous effort. In 2020, conservative government of Boris Johnson, the Department of International Development, DFID, was again dismantled and put under the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. 2025, Republican government of Donald Trump announced the dismantling and merging of USAID as the State Department. So here we see that already 12 years have passed since the first major donor dismantled is development aid. After Trump, we have also seen many other countries announcing cuts. So it's not only USAID. We should not only be preoccupied with USAID. Netherlands, the slogan is make policy more relevant to Dutch taxpayer by explicitly linking international development to the interests of the Netherlands. No more women empowerment, which Holland was very strong about. Now we are going to do trade and migration. By migration means keeping people in the country where they are, not letting them come to Holland, in the case of Holland. Aid reduced by euro 2.4 billion. This is a very large amount for the Netherlands. France, budget cut by 35%. And commission established to assess the impact of development aid. This because the far right allegation that the tax money is being squandered overseas. Again, the same argument that we hear about the United States. And again, remember, it's only a very small percentage of the national budget. UK, again, announcement of reduction of budget for 0.5% of national income, again, from 5 to 3. The ideal is 7. So you see how gradually less and less is given for development. Switzerland will shut down development initiative in Albania, Bangladesh, and Zambia by late 2028. This is just in the first 3 months of 2025. The door, as one observer noticed, the door is just closing on aid everywhere we look. We will see more of this declaration, which imply again less money for development. Revised priorities. So we should not look not only at the amount, but the different way in which aid is used. Reduction of aid to the social sector, health and education, human rights, women, LGBT rights, if not women entrepreneurship, because trade and security are what government now care about. The emphasis is on economic solution and approach, commercialization of aid objective, delivery system, and development partner. We have seen in the recent year an unprecedented role of private commercial sector contractors. Before were international NGO, but more and more we have seen a lot of private contractors taking over, which are very little transparency, very little attention from the public for this contractor. A multi-layer aid agency, it has been so for some time, but even more, and UN agency competing with national organization for funding. Only about 11% of aid go to and through CSO, of which local CSOs, civil society organization, are a minority. This is what official data tell us. So sometimes our perception may be different from what the data tell us. What about emerging aid donors? Actually, for this region are quite important. I will show later on, but the focus is on infrastructure, not so much on soft development issues. This is why we don't pay too much attention to them. But now let's turn to Southeast Asia. Who are the major donors for this region? Well, as you can see, ADB and Japan actually at this moment are the one most significant for this region. The World Bank, China, Germany, United States come there, etc., etc. Again, some of this aid goes to infrastructure or to trade-related issues, so civil society may not see much of that aid, but in terms of financial amount, clearly the United States is not the main donor for this region. Southeast Asia as a whole has a low strategic and economic value compared to other regions. So here on the right side, you will see USAID, where does US foreign aid go? And Ukraine is the main donor, the main recipient country. And you can see there is no one from this region in that list. Also global regions, multilateral is what get the most. And then you will see again that Southeast Asia is not among the priority for the United States. After the pandemic, there has been again a fall of international aid for this region. The highest level were in the 60s, actually, interesting, when there was the Cold War period, after the Cold War period. But in this period is relatively low, 26 billion in 2022. The major country that received were Indonesia and the Philippines. In total, it's just 0.7% of regional GDP, but for poor country, it matters more, of course, in percentage. China development spending is also down. Contribution from the major partner is down. There is a growing portion of loan and concessional loans focused on infrastructure with possible exception of JICA. Timid intra-regional aid. There is some intra-regional aid in Southeast Asia with Thailand as the leading donor in this regard. So this is the situation about official aid, just to put it into perspective. Now, what about other sources of funding? Now, traditionally for NGOs and civil society, actually philanthropy has been one of the main source of funding. Foundation like the Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, Open Society, etc., have funded many civil society organizations in this region. Today, they are adopting less transformative causes, centralized grant making, global program, closure of field office, rise of philanthrocapitalism, so-called philanthrocapitalism, under the auspices of the Gates Foundation. I will not elaborate here too much of what it implies, because this is a discussion apart, but it means that advocacy and more politically oriented organizations have not received the same level of funding in recent years. Local benefactor can be an untapped resource for development, and I think that more effort should be made to educate them about the value of funding more development rather than charitative enterprise. There is quite a lot of money going on as wealth in this region is growing, but very little goes to development. And there are some interesting models, like the Health Promotion Foundation in Thailand, which is paid by taxes on alcohol and tobacco, and actually has funded civil society in Thailand, and has a very large billions in money. Not now, nowadays it's a little bit politically more conservative, but before it did support quite a lot of NGOs. Finally, corporate funding is again the Channel Foundation, as for example, supported some organizations that were in need of money after they lost money from USAID. But there are many private corporate foundations, but sometimes, again, they will not take up risky causes. They will be more comfortable with children or issues that are not controversial. So what are another promising alternative? Crowdfunding and solidarity circle. I think often we don't give enough attention to individual donors who are not the high net worth individual, but are people like us who have some money and could give some of this money for social causes. And this, I think, will be more and more important in the near future. We have seen an expansion of individual giving beyond charity. The best example is COVID. During the COVID pandemic, there was enormous amount of individual funding for all kinds of social issues related to COVID. But most important, there are also two examples from the region which show how human rights and democratic causes can also be supported through massive giving. And one example is Thailand. Again, I will not elaborate too much to limited time, but it's important to think that the student movement in Thailand was mostly funded through individual and not through NGOs and international funding. There may have been some, as the government-friendly people accused the movement, but the reality is quite different. And crowdfunding the war in Myanmar, again, is an example of where the diaspora has put together, and the diaspora is not only politically motivated people, they are often migrants and refugees living in neighboring countries, and they have been able to put together millions to support the current civil war. A challenge how to continue after 4 years, because of course this kind of funding is quite limited in time. So, in conclusion, while we are sad about USAID, we also, and all the other donors that will follow, we need to recognize that there were problems with the funding model that was established. We need to recognize that there was a need to give more to local societies and local organizations. We need to recognize that this region was not a priority region, so already it got not too much ODA as we may think about, and therefore we need to do more to educate potential donors who are not, again, the high net worth individual, but all of us, how to give for development-oriented causes, because there is a lot of giving going on, but often is for each charitable issue or issue that may not be the same issue we care about. For NGOs, there is time maybe to diversify funding. strengthening of peer funding and individual crowdfunding. And most important, I think for all of us as civil society, we need to learn about saving, and we need to learn about reduce waste in our spending. So it's not only the money we get, but how we use the money, ensuring that part of that is used for the sustainability of our organization. So use our voice, become engaged, not only by giving money, but also about analyzing and trying to change the system we are all working for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leah, for your input there. And as Leah mentioned, it really isn't about one donor, nor is it about one moment in time. These cuts reflect a trajectory that's been coming for several years. One might even say the last decade or so. But to go deeper into the specific cuts and the funding freeze of US aid, I'm really happy that Phil Robertson Jr. is here with us today. Phil, can I invite you up here to share a bit of your insight on USAID and how this affects Thailand, but also the region?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name's Phil Robertson. I'm the director of the Asia Human Rights and Labor Advocates, and I want to thank Leah and the entire team here for inviting me and organizing this very timely discussion as we watch the world crumble around us, at least as far as foreign assistance to development in Southeast Asia goes. While there's obviously development aid from other governments, and there are sources in the private sector, and of course, Leah has been speaking about that, I think that very few people recognize just how much the Americans were funding across multiple sectors, ranging from Burma democracy assistance, clean energy and global warming, anti-human trafficking, food assistance, education, health, support for refugees, you name it. And there was certainly US government money going there. And so let me give you a few of the top line estimates of that gives a sense of what has happened here. There's been at least 54 billion US dollars cut from US foreign assistance. There's at least 60,000 foreign aid workers around the world who have lost their jobs, 60,000, including at least 2,000 at USAID, and there will be more of them. So that's at least a fifth of the pre-Trump trafficking at the agency. And most of the rest of the USAID staff are actually on mandatory leave. Earlier, the agency designated only 611 persons as essential staff who must work. 5,800 programs have been terminated. That's about 83% of USAID's projects. But there's no clear list of what's actually been cut, so people are trying to pull it all together. And it's important to recognize that in 2024, US donations to the UN constituted 40% of all funds for humanitarian aid and approximately half of food aid globally. And people may not have tracked this, but also when we talk about public health, the US government under Trump has withdrawn from the World Health Organization again. I think we can say basically we knew it was going to be bad with Trump coming to power, but no one I talked to, and certainly I could not have imagined that it would be a total wipeout like this. And as I wrote in an article I published in the online news site Myanmar Now a couple of weeks ago, Trump and Musk are treating USAID like a hospital full of patients, in which they pulled out all the doctors and the nurses, they shut off the electricity and the water, and they locked the doors on the way out. Then in a couple months, I think they're going to wander back in to see if there's any survivors. There won't be. It's been like a tsunami coming ashore, clearing everything in its path. And most people expected some sort of reform, some sort of reorientation for USAID programs and cancellation of some things. But they didn't anticipate turning off foreign assistance flows completely, firing thousands of employees, shutting down the USAID payment system, and locking people out of offices. And all this, frankly, has appeared to be quite deliberate along the lines of Elon Musk's approach to Twitter after he bought it, which is smash it into pieces and then figure out after the fact what was needed to put it back together in different form. Now, the money was hit first through the 3-month pause on foreign assistance that was imposed by executive order on the first day of Trump's presidency on January 20th. And that was subject to review, which was to determine which aid programs were consistent with Trump's so-called vision of foreign policy, which, to be honest, I still don't really understand what that vision is. But as Human Rights Watch noted, the review process itself was, quote, rushed, lacked necessary internal guidance, featured no methodology for review or public comment, and most important, lacked any risk mitigation process to consider the dangerous consequences of stopping programs abruptly or in their entirety. Now, there was an immediate outcry about some of the food and certainly PEPFAR in Africa. And so on January 28th, the waiver process was established for so-called life-saving humanitarian assistance. But in fact, the programs which received those waivers still have not been able to get their money. That's because there were new impositions made on the payment systems, and most of the USAID staff are not in place. So the systems have been non-functional. And then on March 10th, after the so-called review finished, Secretary of State Rubio formally terminated those 5,800 USAID projects and also 4,100 State Department grants. And as I mentioned, there's no real list of what was terminated. So people are trying to talk to each other to try to figure out what might get through, what might still be viable. I've heard talking to different people that, they've been told their projects are terminated, but then they're given information that like somebody at USAID or at the National Security Council may reconsider starting the program again. It's just a massive degree of uncertainty about everything. And it's important to recognize that what was not so destructive was just turning off the spigot, turning off all the foreign aid, all the money, but it was also destroying the infrastructure. And, that was the USAID staff. They're put on leave, they're locked out of offices. And, during the aid pause, USAID staff were ordered to have no contact with their implementing partners. So what does this mean? Well, what it means is that USAID has really not been providing any guidance to the people that they were funding about what is happening now. These people are just sort of chips in the flood. That means partners are increasingly on their own to sort out what to do, how to maintain or shut down programs, and what to expect regarding remaining reimbursements, assets, and reports. People are literally in the dark. They have no idea what's going to happen next. And this has been so disorienting that each organization is essentially approaching these situations differently, depending on their situation, what reserves they may have, whether they have other support, their assessments of what's going to happen next, what risks they're prepared to take by undertaking activities that might not be reimbursed. And I will tell you, from personal experience, that shutting down a USAID project is not an easy task. I actually did shut down a project. It was a multiple-year project in Cambodia back in 1998. And when I did that, I had a checklist from the USAID contracting officer who had met with me, laid out all the procedures I had to follow, made his judgments on disposals of assets, all the other details, what had to be done. There was an open line to him through the whole process. And that, took a better part of a month to just basically get everything ordered to shut down the project. Now you have people who are expected to shut down projects and they can't get guidance from the local USAID mission, nor can their headquarters get any guidance from headquarters. So it's literally, well, what are you going to do? Are we actually going to shut down in 120 days? Or is it going to be 90? There's not even basic details about that. So the level of guidance is not available. These organizations are flying blind, both at the local level and at the headquarters level. And efforts to get more information are often met with simply no response. One of the biggest casualties of this entire process has been trust at all levels between USAID and its implementing partners, and between those partners with local beneficiaries and groups who are working actually with the projects in the communities. Now, USAID and the US in general is seen as being unreliable, and they're basically seen as being on their way out. Implementing partners are left to their own devices to explain what will happen to project beneficiaries, and they don't have answers either. So it's a tremendous upheaval. People are in shock. People are depressed. People are dismayed. Projects are shutting down. People are losing jobs, and there are no answers. That, I think, is the craziest thing. There's just no answers that are coming forward. Now, why did this happen? Well, Trump and Musk have, echoed some of the worst allegations of USAID critics against USAID, claiming that it's rife with fraud, that it's politically biased, that it's run, at one point it was called by radical left lunatics. And that's actually made it easier for governments and groups to refuse to give USAID access to certain areas. Like, for instance, the Deep South in Thailand, where Thailand has always been very, very concerned about what's going on in the Deep South. USAID had programming down there, peace and reconciliation, community development. The Thai government, and particularly parts of the more conservative aspects of the Thai government, were really very concerned about that. You can count on USAID never being able to go back there again after what's happened. And the attacks that we're seeing against USAID, particularly from some of the right-wing groups, they've really been cherry-picking various different projects. So they've been going primarily after reproductive health, no surprise there, because of course the conservatives in the United States are anti-abortion, but also against LGBTQ rights, especially transgender persons, and also DEI initiatives. And so we have groups like ADF International, which has been driving some of this rhetoric, and they're picking out projects like saying USAID project $32,000 for transgender themed comic book in Peru, or $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia. They're going through these things to pick out stuff they don't like, and then using those kind of projects to justify eradicating billions of dollars worth of aid. So, this is the game that's being played. If we look at the global health impacts, and this comes from USAID itself, it comes from actually the guy who was the head of the health projects, who was writing up justifications for not suspending health projects, and then was basically furloughed. And so he leaked his findings to the New York Times. Senior health officials at USAID have estimated that as a result of their cuts, there will be an additional 18 million cases of malaria per year, and as many as 166,000 additional deaths. They're saying that there'll be an additional 200,000 children paralyzed with polio annually, and hundreds of millions of infections. That will be at least 1 million children who are not treated for severe acute malnutrition, and that there'll be more than 28,000 new cases of infectious diseases like Ebola and Marburg every year. So the damage is real and it's significant. But why did they go after foreign aid? Well, it's partly because Trump has always been suspicious about foreign aid, but it's also, as we say in Thai, which means basically kill the chicken and show it to the monkeys. And they knew that foreign aid had relatively fewer defenders in the American population, the public. They don't really understand foreign aid. Many Americans are suspicious about giving money overseas. And so if you're going to try to establish your reputation as, axe-swinging budget cutters, go after one of the weakest links in the chain, and that was certainly foreign aid. And while we here overseas are very concerned about it, if you talk to congressmen and others in the United States, they'll be like, well, foreign aid, they really don't get it. So what's going to happen next? The foreign aid review process that Rubio set up, he said, look, he said, quote, every dollar we spend, every program we fund, every policy we pursue must be justified with the answer to three simple questions. Does it make America safer? Does it make America stronger? And does it make America more prosperous? I think that, frankly, is just a lot of rhetoric. You know, they're not going to really be supporting a lot of things that I think would make U.S. safer, stronger, and more prosperous. But coming out of the review process, talking to various people, the best guesses right now is that aid may survive in areas of public health, in humanitarian aid and emergency assistance. However, you know, in some ways this makes sense because the United States doesn't want starving, disease-ridden people banging on their borders. And there's a recognition, at least to some extent, that, you know, an Ebola outbreak in Uganda may not remain confined there. And also a fair amount of the food aid that is distributed by USAID globally is purchased from US farmers. So there's an agricultural lobby that wants to have food aid continue. What is going to get torpedoed? What's going to get knocked down? Well, first and foremost, anything about democracy, governance, and human rights, which hurts me particularly because, of course, that's the field I work in. But, you know, this is being styled by the MAGA people as trying to promote regime change. And this is, of course, the things like friends like Putin and Lukashenko and Belarus and others don't like. They don't like talking about democracy, human rights, or governance. We're also going to see probably nothing going forward on environment and climate change. Economic growth and poverty alleviation is going to get knocked down. And other programs, for instance, like supporting agriculture or agricultural development in other countries. Why would they do that? That creates competition to American farmers. And the expectation is that this severely downsized USAID will be tucked under a part of the State Department. But that USAID itself, which is established by an act of Congress, will not be formally dissolved, at least not in the short term. So that's where we are right now with USAID. I would also add just very briefly that there were significant amounts of grants being made by the State Department through the Bureau on Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor, for instance, to Burma, on North Korea, on the Uyghurs and things like that. All that is gone. And those contractors who are working on those grants that were given directly by Congress to the State Department for specific programs or needs have been wiped out. There is an independent foundation, the National Endowment for Democracy, which for at least 2 months had its funds blocked, despite the fact that it's a separate congressional appropriation to an independent organization created by Congress. They're now negotiating that, and that may actually be unblocked, but in part because it's not State Department. But, you know, anything that was considered to be foreign aid is being hit. This morning, we saw DOJ and the FBI raiding the U.S. Institute for Peace, which is another independent 501c3 established organization established by Congress through a law, and that's been taken over. They've been, you may have seen some of their work. They've been working particularly effectively here in the region on the scam centers in Myanmar. So, you know, perhaps somebody will say to them, well, you know, some of the people being scammed are also Americans. Perhaps you want to continue that project. Yep. Finally, I would just say last thing is independent media, the Voice of America, Radio Free Asia are gone as of this weekend. So we're seeing a wipeout, to be honest, of U.S. foreign policy and foreign aid. And it's devastating. You'll hear about this from some of the other people who have been getting those grants.
Thank you very much, Phil, for walking us through the extent of the havoc caused by the USAID cuts. We do have a few other panelists, so sorry to have to cut you off. We do want to stay on topic, though, with USAID. And I'm bringing Sara Piazzano, as I mentioned previously, my former boss, on the panel. Once my boss, always my boss, I guess. My mind, anyway. Sara, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So, as Gianluca introduced me, I'm a project manager. I've been a project manager for the last 20 years, and for the last 15 years, I manage USAID projects for US NGO. So I don't want to repeat what Phil said, but I can go quickly and show you, because I think it's always interesting to see the evidence and understand what happened starting from January 20. So January 20, we see this executive order on realignment for aid. On that date, I think more than 30 executive orders were signed. So not everyone noticed this coming out. Following this executive order, all the USAID mission in the region, globally, receive a letter, the stop work order, that was requesting all USAID implementing partners to immediately stop all activities. This letter was asking two different things: to cease all DAI activities, plus suspending all other activities pending a review. This was a Friday evening. Friday evening, this letter was sent to all the missions. So Saturday, implementing partners started to receive this information. They started panicking, panicking because you can understand, again, from the manager point of view, it's quite complicated to suspend activities, suspend spending. You have to pay salaries, you have subcontractors to pay, you have to abide with local laws and so on. Then what happened? People started to receive the termination letters. This is an example of a termination letters. Between these two, there were some requests for waivers to continue some programs, but anyway, funding was suspended. There were also some requests to implementing parties to justify, as Phil was mentioning, justify how the project was responding to the priorities. Is it helping USAID? Is putting American first? I find it was a bit funny that the implementing partners were asking that. You know, we are subcontractors. It's like someone asks you to build a house, and then halfway through the project, they tell you, why are you building the house? Is it what I want? I mean, it's their problem if they change their manager, but we were just implementing what we were asked to do. And there is also a work plan that was approved, so that's what we were doing. There are two major mechanisms from USAID to fund organizations. One is through acquisition, where I buy a service or goods, and the other through assistance, where we decide to work together on a certain goal, like combating trafficking. So one system, usually I pay after you deliver the service. The other system, I gave you advances. In the first case, you can understand also that since all payments were suspended, there were many organizations that already deliver services that didn't get the payments for those. As coming back, just out of interest, these letters, usually you would receive this letter from the agreement officer for your project. But these letters were signed by other people, and they were coming directly from Washington. Just out of interest, I Googled this person. I found just something on LinkedIn with 3 connections. So yeah, it was quite interesting. Going back to what Leah said before, no, Southeast Asia has never been a priority for USAID. You can see the biggest beneficiaries of USAID are not in this region. What is interesting is that USAID has always given a lot of priority to governance projects compared to other donors. So we need to consider that when thinking about the future projects that can be funded by other donors. So how much was coming to Southeast Asia? So I did all my calculations today from the budget from fiscal year 2023. And you can see that the total, I hope it's correct, but it's a public document, the federal budget for that year. The total is $455 million for Southeast Asia. And you can see also how much for each country. There can be some discrepancy because it was not so simple to find some institutes that they can work on different countries like the Institute for Peace, they receive funds separately, but they also work in this region. So maybe there is something a little more there, but you can see that it's not even the 1% of the total USAID budget. So who is receiving this money? So we have this 400. Is this money all coming to Southeast Asia? Who is getting this money? These are the main recipients of the money. So as I explained before, usually through a grant or a contract, who will receive the money? It's UN agencies. This is globally, or it's some international NGOs, especially from the US. It's just to give you an idea. As you know, the system is that these are the first recipients, but most of the cases, in all the cases, I would say, they are not so much involved in the implementation. The major role is on monitoring, designing the strategy, and assigning grants to local organizations. So implementation is mainly through local partners that they receive sub-grants, subcontracts. So how much is arriving here? I try to do some calculations. This is an estimation that is looking at these 455 millions. So considering that for administrative costs for USAID, I saw it's between 3 and 5%. This is including also not only the missions in the region, but if there is monitoring cost, auditing, then there is the money that is given to the implementing partners. The implementing partners, they have indirect cost. This money will stay usually in the United States, in the headquarters. So these are the costs for the headquarters. Then the implementing partners, let's say the US NGO in this region, they have some costs that are salaries, operations, and then they give the grants to local organizations. This is an estimation, but we can see that approximately the funding gap we are talking about is 217,000 million. It's okay, $217 million. This is the gap. Is it clear? Sorry, I'm going really quick. There's an estimation, but to show you what was coming here. Of course, I mean, any manager would say this is not the most efficient system. USAID was working on giving more direct grants to local organizations. The process that is called localization. The idea was to cut the intermediaries, to cut the NGOs, these implementing partners. As you can see, it's quite a big cost. But still, the majority of grants were still going to international organizations. I think it was, there was a big increase in the last year, and it reached almost 10% of the grants. That was the maximum that was reached. I have a comment. I have just two more slides. I have almost finished. A comment on localization. So I think a problem of the approach to localization is that it was more a way to give, to ask a local organization instead international organizations to implement programs. But there was never the attempt to change the way of working. Never the question on which are the priorities we need to work on, and thinking of shifting the power. So who is deciding how to work, on what to work? So even in this approach of localization, if the local actors, they respond only to international driven priorities, and it's not only USAID, it's many other donors, we will never see these changes. It's the real change that we would like to see, and maybe we can think more about that, thinking about the future, is the funding must be led by those closest to the challenges. I've read an interesting project on the reverse call for proposal, where it's the local NGOs that they prepare what they want to work on, and then they look for a donor. And then the last thing I want to say, am I within the time? Okay. It's something that Leah already mentioned, but I think for me it's key. I don't think that there are cuts to development aid. I think there are shifts. Development aid is shifting. I think it looks like it makes no sense what happened to USAID. There was a lot of theater, but I think it makes a lot of sense. And thinking about what it was requested, what is the priority, the best interest from for the US government. So what is increasing in developing aid? This is increasing. Concessional loan providers, concessional loans are increasing. In 2023, was a record high in multilateral development banks. So what are concessional loans? It means that banks will give loans with very good conditions, usually zero interest. And these loans for development usually will go to government institutions, in some cases to the private sector, in countries under development. There is subsidized from the countries to support, so this money will go to the World Bank or to other banks, subsidizing so that the financial institutes still, the loans will still be profitable for the financial institutes. This is a change that had already happened. Japan is doing that. They shifted almost all their development aid there. Look at the numbers here. Look at China. China, of course, has always used this approach. It's interesting because there was a small amount of money that was going through USAID for concessional loans. I would be really curious to know if that has been cut or not, and if this is the way that we are going to see the future of development aid. A few other things. So the government subsidized these financial institutions. Major recipients, that's interesting. You have India, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Vietnam. I was thinking, oh, for Bangladesh will be a big impact not having USAID. But actually, if you compare what they're getting for World Bank, USAID is nothing. India, they always say they have this propaganda, they don't get development aid to remain independent, but actually they are one of the first recipient of concessional loans. Of course, with concessional loans, there are some, there's something in exchange. In exchange, like best interest for the country. So that's what I'm saying. Maybe it makes sense what happened, and maybe this is the future that we are going to see. European Union is shifting in this direction. The plan for European Union from 2027 is going through concessional loans through financial institutions for development aid. That's all. Just ending with this quote that I like. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sara, for your inputs there. I think it complements really well what Leah spoke about before, and also, of course, Phil. And to go into detail on how funds flow, or rather how funds don't flow to the local level, to grassroots organizations. We're going to shift gears a little bit now, moving a little bit away from USAID to grassroots. We have with us today Mr. Aung Zaw, as I mentioned earlier, who needs no introduction. He is the founder of the Irrawaddy. He is a leader of independent media, reporting on Myanmar, which has faced extreme funding challenges even before these USAID cuts. I'd love to invite Mr. Aung Zaw to speak a little bit about how these cuts have affected, or if they have affected, his work and the work of others who are reporting independently on Myanmar.
Well, Thank you for having me. Leah, thank you for inviting us. So I don't prepare any presentation, but I want to share a few thoughts. I don't think I will take too much time. The first thing is President Putin and then the war criminals, Mei Aung and Hun Sen, people like that are now opening their champagne and thanking inquiry to Trump and Elon Musk. So this is, I think, current situation. We are in deep crisis. In our office, also in a crisis management mood. And because we have 65 people working with us for the last 20 years, 30 years, very professional, very dedicated, very committed. And sorry to mention, is not very well paid, but they are trained in Berkeley or Hong Kong University in journalism, or Peter is there. So I think these are very committed people with me, with us for last 10 years, 20 years, practice of journalism, independent journalism. We talk about truth. We talk about write a story on the fact-based, and then we expose the stories and the power abuse and stand up to the dictators. This is our job. But still, we are started in AHRLA in Thailand, thanks to Thai people and Thai CSO and NGOs and journalists here. And we started here with very small organizations. As we are not CNN or New York Times or rich media groups, we started in a very clandestine, very clandestine underground publication, because we wanted to talk about what is happening in Burma or Myanmar at the time. Then we grow slowly. Then in terms of your survival and your operating system or operation, you had to depend on the donors. And still, I think we are the first pioneer. We are the one, proudly, I myself, and we are first in the Burmese media in AHRLA in 92. I pronounce that we are truly independent publication, not associated with the government or opposition, anyone, including the donors that come in to provide us, including USAID or USAID-related agencies or NED particularly, and at the time, George Soros Open Society Institute, OSI, when they were operating with us. And then one thing is we jealously protect our editorial independence. That's a very important thing. So even now, after 30 years, we just celebrated 30 years our anniversary, not just 2 years ago. So we are now entering into 32 years of our operation. And then we back and forth, we had sometimes very unnecessary and hostile relationship with the donors because we wanted to control our editorial policies. But we still survive. And this crisis, I think, is a very deep crisis that we are facing now. I think we have to find a way out to survive, because why? We don't want Putin or Hun Sen or Mei Aung to be so happy. And we want to make sure that we still survive. And we have to keep our voice. We got to keep our story because it's so important. But I don't know how we're going to keep it. I will share a few thoughts, okay? So, now 2021, there was a coup in Myanmar or Burma. And then a lot of our colleagues, including my office, being confiscated, they've been seized, and they've been pushed out of the country. Otherwise, they will be put in prisons. And one of my key managers is also stay in prison and in Burma. Anyway, many of them fled here to the border area. Then we established, I call it second life in AHRLA. So this is our second life in AHRLA, another kind of reincarnation. And as soon as we arrive here, continue to provide very much needed information, hard news, because there were killing and shootings and bombing and air raids happening around the country. And the USA, through the internews, and the EU through the IMS, they came immediately to give us emergency support and long-term support, the 15 months to survive, so that we could be able to establish our team, office, and provide the staff inside and outside. And we started again, like before, the one foot in and one foot out strategy. So from here on the stage, I also would like to thank our implementing partners and donors, including EU and also USA, giving us a support. But now, as our previous presenter mentioned that, like we received the termination, suspension letter first, and we were very confused with the languages inside. We even had to need to hire a lawyer to decode the languages. Out of the blue, we received the letter, and we trying to understand the languages inside of the letter, the content of it. And there was a lot of rumors going around. I'm a journalist, I need to confirm that whether whatever amount of money that remain or transfer a month before the termination, the contract was signed just a month before the termination, whether we have to return the money or not. So there was a big, discussion among the Burmese groups, not just among the media houses, but also among the our CSO and civil society groups. So then we received the termination letter. Again, there were a lot of confusion among us that how do we do it, because we cannot get any kind of counseling or any kind of advice even from our intermediary, whatever to call it, the implementing actors or partners. They stopped communicating with us, but informally they could help us trying to decode the languages. So we were left alone anyway. So this is a situation we are having. So the positive thing I want to share is not just all the depressing story, but what happened was we have about 800, I think, reporters and journalists now in Thailand, living in Thailand, fled from Burma, and we have about 60 media houses, small and big. We are one of the biggest among the 5 media houses. So we initiated to convene a small closed-door emergency meeting we had at the Chiang Mai University with the help from Chiang Mai University as a secretariat. And we had a half-day convening session. And then we came out with the memorandum. And in the memorandum, we sent out to donors and partners, and also some related agency who may be interested, who kept funding independent media and AHRLAs. So we come up with the 3 or 4 points. So I will share it's very organic, that before the media houses are very competing each other, and it was a healthy competition, but this time we all realized that we ought to sit down and talk about it. And also our previous, one of the presenters, Sara, mentioned that where the money missing. So these are issues that we want to, because of from 2020 to 2024, for 4 years, there were quite a large amount of money being granted for the earmark for the AHRLA media houses, they call it investing in media. But most of the media houses are, after 4 years in 2024, bleeding. They're all bleeding. We're all bleeding. We have a staff leaving. We cannot keep that very qualified staff, and they want to move to another greener area because where they pay, they got more funding, better funding. So we came up with some proposal or some memorandum that we called the donors to have a more collaborative approach with the media partners, collaborative approach, emphasizing the co-design and co-produce projects and activities. Because we had a lot of activities and training and project-based funding, but what is missing was the core support. If we don't have a core support, we couldn't survive. You can have a lot of project and trainings and capacity building again. And you're very familiar with this catchy word. And all the projects are gone somewhere. And then when I as a head of I hate to be now the leader of the boss of the Irrawaddy now, because we don't know where to find, right? So we have to think of where the money coming from, where's the real money there. So we came up with that. Core support is important, and also to balance, we asked the balance between those trainings and project-based training with the core support. So these are the 10 things that we came up and to reflect the needs of the media landscape, which they have to make a need assessment. And we have to follow what they've been designing. And we would like to make sure that we are part of it to design the future project. This is what we come up with in the last 2 months of our meeting. And so thinking about sustainable revenue models and monetization, because if you have a larger audience, we can generate some income. But I won't be filthy rich, even we have a 5 million subscriber maybe in our YouTube channel, or 2 million subscriber maybe, but the amount of our income was rather very modest, and maybe 5% of the whole operation, or maybe if you're lucky, you may have a 10% of the whole operation. The rest has to come from donors and funders. That's the thing. So monetization is also very important to sustain our operation, our important missions. So what we did as Irrawaddy is we reach out to individual donors and philanthropists for the last 10 years and ask them for donation. And more sustainable, more recurrent, or more every yearly donation, that's our contribution that we ask. And they continue to provide us and also give us a more flexibility. I think that's another key word. If you have a flexibility, doesn't mean that you are corrupt, but if donors are more flexibility in dealing with their local partners, then if there's a direct support instead of too many implementing others, if we have a less and less implementing partners, I think it's better for us. A lot of those who are working on the ground. So this is what we come up with, 3 or 4 points, and seeking more from the private donation, private foundation, as well as, like Leah just mentioned that the Burmese diaspora, and they're very important because the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of Burmese resistant groups, they usually don't get any kind of funding from anywhere. Actually, most of the income came from Burmese people, inside or outside. So this is one of their income. We also raise a donation from those Burmese, but I think most of the Burmese living abroad are much more, they're not rich billionaire, but they are smaller middle class or blue collar workers. So I don't think they can donate a lot, but still, I think quite helpful for us, I think. So anyway, this is what I want to share with you, that how we are dealing with the this crisis, revenue generation, as well as trying to renegotiate if there's a new opportunities. I think there should be for all of us. We won't give up, but we would like to prepare this memorandum because we would like to renegotiate. And even for the media alone, if the donors are coming, we would like to making sure there are less red tape, and we will have a kind of the Burmese representative advisory board, such a thing, so that we can talk to them directly, that they can hear our voice. And we also calling them to be transparent and accountable, because we know that the numbers are there, the money did not flow to us. The trickle down, trickle down is so small sometimes. So that's why we are asking them to do balance the overheads. Because of, I said earlier that we have a lot of dedicated staff and people with me as journalists. I mean, they are modestly paid. And then the conclusion, we don't want to lose them. Like RFA, VOA, I think they all gone. And the military in Myanmar or around the dictators around the region, they're happy to see that. But I want to make sure they're disappointed. They're disappointed. They will be disappointed. We will keep our voices gone, keep airing. But still, we don't know, whether we can keep all those 65 people or how many we got to cut it down. what program we think they may be carried out or suspended, and keep the core team to keep working on it. This is what we are, thinking for the long term to survive. I think that's all I can share at the moment. If you have any question, you can ask me later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aung Zaw. And I think it was again very, very important sharing from a different field, let's say, to what you've heard so far, but yet very, very important, which is reporting in independent and free media. Staying on the topic of grassroots, we'll shift from media back to CSOs, NGOs rather. I'd love to invite Emilie to come up and speak to us a little bit about the effect that the USAID funding cuts have had on her foundation, the Manushya Foundation, and how she sees the future going forward.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Leah, for organizing this discussion. Thank you for inviting Manushya Foundation. So my name is Emilie Palamy Pradichit. I'm the founder and executive director of Manushya Foundation. For those who don't know us, we are a feminist, human rights, intersectional and decolonial organization. I founded Manushya back in 2017. And I heard people speaking before me about how USAID funding is trying to become more and more localized. And I think we've been an organization that has been fighting for a long time to reform USAID, calling for localization. And now when it was actually happening, now it's no longer existing. So Manushya, we work at the intersection of digital rights and online freedom. So we are calling on tech companies' accountability on the digital space. We also work on climate justice and corporate accountability, as well as access to justice before the UN. And one of the big part of the work that we've been doing that has been cut because of USAID funding cut is all the work that we've been doing on protecting human rights defenders and resourcing human rights defenders. And that's a part of the work that we were not advertising and publicly talking about because it's a very sensitive and dangerous work. Because we're working with grassroots who are fighting against authoritarian governments, who are fighting for democracy, who are denouncing false climate solutions, who are denouncing mining companies and corporations harming the environment, harming their lives and grabbing the lands. And so most of the groups that we have been working with are indigenous people, environmental defenders, climate defenders, feminist groups, LGBT groups, youth for democracy groups. And it was really important for us to be able to finally implement what we call the decolonial grant-making strategy. And that's something that we have been fighting for so many years. I remember myself coming here one time, launching a USAID report where we were writing about civil society sustainability. And we were complaining to the USAID people saying, every year we write your report, you have a prime that gets so much money and we get peanuts to write your report. And here we're bringing you all the communities, telling you about how your funding is not reaching them. So something needs to change. And we've been doing that for years, advocating for years and relying on project-based funding. Because, small organizations like ours could never be allowed to get core funding. So fighting for years, calling for localization, calling for less bureaucracy, calling for the need to stop this very colonial aspect of funding with so much bureaucracy and so much pressure on groups like us to report back. So, like groups on the ground, you spend a lot of time reporting back to the American donor, right? The main recipient. And you spend more time reporting to the donor that you end up not having time to do your work. And then they are telling you, you don't have the capacity to deliver. And so that was really the struggle that we're going through receiving development aid funding. And that's why we're fighting this, and that's why we're calling for localization. And finally, after 6 years of fighting, with people at USAID telling them, give us more money, give us more money. You need to eliminate the intermediaries. You need to be able to give it to us just below the prime. We need to be able to receive a lot of core funding so we can give back to the groups on the ground. We were able to finally be part of that. So at the end of 2023, USAID launched the flagship program called Powered by the People. And Powered by the People the goal of Powered by the People was to finally shift the power and really give power to the people on the ground. So it was to have organizations like Manushya working at the regional level, doing what we call a decolonial grant making strategy. So for us to work directly with grassroots on the ground and to decide who will get the funding, and not for the American NGO to decide who would get the funding, really based on the needs, and it was all about core funding. So most of the grants that we were giving were strategic grants supporting core funding of movements so that they can sustain. That was really the goal of Powered by the People. And another part of Powered by the People was to fight against authoritarianism, fight for democracy, shift the power to the people on the ground, and supporting those who are actually hiding and having to protect and run for their lives because they are being chased by the Hun Sen regime, the Cambodian and the Vietnamese and the Chinese and the Burmese governments. And so another part of our work was to provide what we call emergency assistance. And we were able to do it in a very innovative way because within 24 hours, we were able to get the funds out, which was groundbreaking for USAID to be able to do that. Because we were really moving away from all the bureaucracy within USAID. It was built on trust, it was built on community of practice, and we were able to support a lot of activists. So just last year, we were able to give 20 strategic grants to grassroots, indigenous groups, environmental groups, climate defenders, digital rights groups, Rohingya women to be able to support survivors of sexual assault, but also Rohingya women to be able to document hate speech against Rohingya people, online. We were able also to provide 33 rapid response that supported more than 130 activists and their families on the ground. And one of the biggest things that we're doing is that we had safe houses in Thailand. I'm sure that you heard about transnational repression and how there is repression cross borders and how authoritarian governments are actually supporting one another to crack down on dissenting voices. And so you have a lot of Cambodian activists, Vietnamese activists, Lao activists, Burmese activists that need to hide and who become the prime target of authoritarian regimes because of the online advocacy that they do, because of the work that they do on the ground, because they're protecting the land. So at some point they need to cross border. And sadly, for a lot of activists, Thailand is a safe haven. Although Thailand is not safe, it's still safer than Laos. It's still safer than Cambodia. It's still safer than Vietnam. And once they come here, they become a prime target because the current Thai government has also increased its cooperation with neighboring authoritarian governments to crack down and arrest and deport activists. Just in early January, we have Lam Kia who was assassinated, in Bangkok. He had just crossed the border from Siem Reap. Last year, we had activists who were arrested and we had to, go after diplomats, pressure diplomats so that they don't get deported. So the work that we did was loved by communities on the ground because we were protecting them, putting them into safe house, hiding them, protecting them so they don't get arrested. But it was not necessarily well welcomed by diplomats because you end up pressuring them, to talk with the government and to move the ass a little bit more. Sorry for the language, but that was the work that we were doing. And when the USAID funding cut came, we knew that we would be among the first groups that will be terminated because we are feminists, we are pro-Palestine, and although we were receiving money from USAID, we were very clear that we will stand, on our values and we will still advocate for Palestine. So we were visibly pro-Palestine. We are still, of course, feminist groups, pro-LGBT, pro-sex work, pro-abortion, pro-climate justice, and we are everything that Trump and Musk hate. And we're also working hard, on digital rights. Thank you. And so it was clear that we will be among the first groups to be terminated. So we were suspended, like many of you in the room, if you were working on those projects, on 24th January. And so when you are a small organization, you don't want to let go of your staff, right? But every day you keep someone in your team, you're putting yourself in debt. And why we were putting ourselves in debt is because small organization like us, we advance funds. So with the USAID project, we were on a fixed term amount agreement, which means that in order to receive our money, we needed to complete our work, send our work to the American NGO for them to reimburse us. The thing is, even if we have completed our work, the American NGO did not send us our money, although we completed it before the stop work order. Because on their side in DC, if they had sent us our money, they would bankrupt. So what Trump and Musk are doing is actually perpetrating neocolonialism and perpetrating everything that we were working against, which means putting back, like we are going backwards, where you had the global majority fighting against the global minority to finally receive the funding. And now we're in a situation where the global majority is in need of getting reimbursed, or we are closing. But then the global majority groups are telling you, but we will bankrupt. But we are asking actually the global minority group to stand in solidarity with us. Because in the end of the day, people who are doing the work on the ground, people who are taking all the risk, people who are fighting for democracy, people who are actually fighting against what Trump and Musk are doing in the US, we're the most impacted. We're the most impacted by the rise of authoritarianism. What they are doing is allowing authoritarianism to thrive. Because by dismantling civil society, by dismantling us, they are killing the check and balance. They are killing accountability. And the ones who can tell you what's really happening on the ground is us. So if there's a need to stand in solidarity, really in terms of funding and supporting groups on the ground that have been impacted by the USAID funding cuts, is to support groups like us. And what we have been seeing instead, we have been seeing NGOs receiving funding to save themselves much more faster than we can. You know, like I'm nobody for a philanthropic organization. I'm nobody for a donor. They don't know me. However, they will know ICNL. They will know all the DC-based organizations. I also sit on boards of NGOs. So I also receive those emails when the board will tell you, or the ED will tell you, thanks to our amazing board, we were able to get an individual donor, very wealthy. They saved us. I don't have the luxury to say that to my team. I don't have the luxury to say, I know this very rich person, thanks to our board, they saved us. Why? Because my board is not even comprised of wealthy people. My board is a Thai board comprised of local community people, because for me, they are my heroes. They are not, the person. I don't see a board as someone who is going to bring me money. I see my board as the people who represent our constituency. So, the whole development aid now is shifting, yes, but it's also showing us that the way that we have been working for more than 50 years has been so sustainable, has been so toxic. For years, we have been told that we need to have our capacity built. But if after 50 years of development aid, we still don't have our capacity built, it means that it did not work. So it's the end of the development aid as we used to know it. And I think it's really time for us to come together as the global majority to rethink the way we were receiving money. Our predecessors, older generation before me, they were bowing down to the way that money was being given. My generation, we have been pushing back because we have been sick and tired of this toxicity. And I think now we reached the very end of it. We don't sleep. We spend days and nights writing to donors. We are invisible. We don't get, we were lucky because the Foundation Channel has given us an emergency bridge funding because we are feminist groups, but it's still too little to be able to fully sustain what we did. We have to accept the fact that we must downsize because there's not enough funding for everybody. So it means that everybody has to accept that you must downsize at the end of the day. Prioritizing the work that we do, but there's also a real need to come together as the global majorities. So what's next? We did crowdfunding, by the way. We did crowdfunding. We are trying to get money. We do call for donations, but because people don't know us really, and we're also in a region where people don't like the work that we do. Like people who have money here are the conservatives. People who help us are the working class. The working class is going to give us 1,000 baht max, The conservative, they don't want to give us money because we're going to fight against 112, against lèse-majesté. We're going to fight for women's rights. We're going to fight against patriarchy. Of course, they're not going to give us money. They want the establishment to thrive, and they want, the elite to still thriving and controlling this world. So even if we do crowdfunding, we're not going to get more than maybe 2,000 USD, after 1 month. So I think it's really time for us, and we've been telling that with friends from the global majorities that, yes, as our friend from Burma said, we need to be the voices and the face when speaking with donors. I don't know how many surveys I have completed since the USAID funding cuts. How many surveys I'm asking for funding, I'm receiving a survey. Please fill out this survey. You will help us understand the impact. The impact is not enough visible. So I fill out the survey, I fill out 6 surveys already. And at the end of each survey, they hold a webinar. They invite you to the webinar and they tell you, now that we have the data, we will analyze it and we will come back to you later. But we don't have time for later. We need money now and we need the support now. So philanthropic institutions have been disappointing. And I'm very worried when I see that the future of development aid will be concessional loans given directly to government, because governments are not going to give money to pro-democracy groups, are not going to give money to feminist groups, are not going to give money to indigenous people and climate justice groups. So we really need to rethink aid, and we really need to come together as the global majority, find new revenue models and think together how we are going to step out of it, because for years we called for shifting the power inside foreign aid, but now we need to shift the power and bring the power back to us. We need to be able to fund ourselves from our own region and tap into the wealth here. I like to end with a quote as well, but for me, I'm going to take a feminist quote from Audre Lorde. She said, even before I was born, you know, that the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. And that's true. That's real. A lot of people are still using the master's tool because it's too difficult for them. It's too, they're too afraid to lose their privileges. They are too afraid to lose what is benefiting them. But it's time for us to build our own tools and to build our own house. So that's what I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emilie, for your inputs and sharing with us the realities of running a grassroots organization, but also a very, very strong and powerful message of defiance, upholding your values, your principles in the midst of this tumultuous time where other people are sometimes bending over backwards for funding. So thank you very much. On that note, I would like to then invite our last, but never the least, rather, it's been a long session, huh? A very interesting speaker, which is Kaona, better known as Toto, who heads the ILGA Foundation. Kaona, you've taken a different approach, I believe, to funding your organization. We've heard a lot about USAID. We've heard a lot about the major donors. I believe you've managed to have a diversity of funding to the way you run your organization. So given what Emilie just talked about in terms of donor dependency, could you share with us how your organization has worked to reduce reliance on a single funder?
Thank you very much. I'm very excited, to be honest. I'm very humbled to be here. Thanks, Ajahn Leah, for inviting. I'm Toto. You can call me Toto. This is Thai long name. I am a president of ILGA Foundation. ILGA Foundation is a registered foundation for International Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual, Trans, Intersex Association Asia. It is not a registered association. So the ILGA Asia used the foundation register in Thailand to do operation for them. So I'm helping ILGA Asia as a president, but I was a co-chair of ILGA Asia in 2013 to 2015. Apart from the regional movement, LGBTIQN movement in Asia, I also a co-founder of a group called Trans Empowerment. It's a trans man, trans masculine movement in Thailand. So, and a small foundation called Isan Gender Diversity Network Foundation, which is a very small grassroots feminist foundation located in Khon Kaen. It's just only one foundation working for the whole region, northeastern region or Isan, 20 provinces, 20 million population. I would highlight on the work of Isan Gender Diversity Network or IGDN. It's a very small. It starts from the collectives, from 5 people of co-founder. We receive, first of all, the 5 co-founder originally born and raised in Isan, from Surin, Khon Kaen, from Buriram, from Roi Et. And then we thought that why the LGBTI movement appear only in Bangkok, Pattaya, or Chiang Mai. So that's why we thought about, because all of us involved with the movement for many years. And then we thought about how to set up a small group first in Khon Kaen. and then we draft the, let's say, the group constitution together, and finally write a proposal in English before ChatGPT become famous, to be honest. So we apply grant to many funders, and finally we got 2 funds from Swedish government, SIDA, which is under Save the Children project. This is their regional initiative of Burmese and also Thailand to create capacity building for local NGO. This fund, it should be 5 years, but we have been terminate this fund, this contract 2 years before the original contract. What this is telling us, this is highlight the fact that Ajahn Leah and also Kun Sara highlight a minute, last 30 minutes, 40 minutes, that the trend of decreasing fund from the government is already happened in the past 2-3 years. So my org suffer already a year for the a year back. We already reside the downside our program, downside our organization. However, the legacy of that project, it make us having so-called operational capacity, financial procedures, auditing process. So from the grassroots collective group, we able to set up a registered foundation within only 2 years. From 5 people running, no experience running project. And then first year we received funding from SIDA, 2 million Thai baht, and then 1 million from private US funders, 3 million Thai baht. Right now we still keep running with this 3 million Thai baht, but from new donors. This was very intense. And you know what? 5 co-founder, no one is paid staff. We are volunteer. So we hire manager, we hire coordinator, we hire local people, local young youth people, because our key priority is to set up the org, donate our time to volunteer to run the org, and then set up the capacity, finance, and also build the people capacity to run project. That's why our key program for IGDN is called ISAN, Children and Youth Leaders. Back to 4-5 years ago, when the youth movement arose, a lot of youth protests across the region. So we see that trend as well. That's why we want to integrate social rights and feminist idea into that the pro-democratic youth movement. So we design this program, and then we grant them 1,000 or 1,500 USD for themselves to run any kind of project that they want. So the first year we able to grant like 8 groups from 6 provinces. Last year, the second batch, we able to grant around 7 grants from 6-7 provinces, and this year will be the 3rd year of this project. So this is echo the fact that the trend of the government fund is, let's say, shifting or decreasing over the past year. I want to highlight on the situation for LGBTI movement in the regional level as well. When Ajahn Leah take me, hey Toto, who can talk about the USAID situation for Southeast Asia, maybe LGBTI group. I say I was in Nepal at ILGA Asia conference in Nepal, and we and also ASEAN Soki Caucus also published online on the impact of USAID free for LGBTI org in Southeast Asia. And also for Thai CSO, LGBTI CSO, we had Thailand Caucus discuss internally on what are impact for our organization. And the result the same. Maybe they fill in the questionnaire. The 20 organization on that research showing that the range of the impact from 10% to 40% from 20 orgs across Southeast Asia, working on social rights, feminists, LGBTIQ rights in the region. It is the same level that I heard from our Thai LGBTI CSO. The range from 10 to 40%. Yesterday, there was a panel discussion, especially on HIV/AIDS organization, discuss about the impact of USAID freeze. Many of them already suspend activity, return the office, planning to cut staff benefit and salary, or even planning to cut staff. For the slide that Ajahn Sara showed, the 7 million USD for Thailand, very small, right? But on the other side, the US government invests a lot as well on health, and HIV, AIDS, health in Thailand, especially for the new initiative like providing PrEP, distribute this kind of medicine to people. 85% distributed by NGO. So meaning that today I read the news that they make the news from yesterday discussion. There would be more than 10,000 people who impact from it. And also for HIV, they also provide hormone treatment for trans people as well. That might be suspended as well. So the impact is a lot, particularly on HIV/AIDS for LGBTIQ. This is a fact, and this is what we are facing right now. Dr. Nitya, the executive director of AHRLA, mentioning that they trying to find the solution, short term, medium term, long term. But at the end of the day, the solution might be the same that I will discuss later. I want us to think about what are the rationale behind Trump's administrative decision. It's a geopolitical shift as well. It's because American has been stressed by by China, and they want to shift their fund or the way of they run the government to compete with China or not. And also starting from the start of Ukraine and also Russia war shift the direction of Europe a lot. I read the social media of European Union, they announced that they're going to invest 800 billion euro in security for Europe. So I think what is going on here, what's in our world, in especially for the developed country, Western country. So the geopolitical shift at the end of the day affect to development to the field that we are working, because we cannot get the fund from our government. This is because we are more progressive, let's say, way of work, or want to create a new value, a new thing for our society. This is just my question, and I want us to discuss further. I think this is the reason why I'm here today. Is a part of the USAID freeze. There are 2 executive orders that affect heavily on LGBTI people, women as well. It's on DEI initiative. The DEI have been implemented in the US for I think more than 20 years. The DEI, I make it to summarize it, it's the initiative to protect people from discrimination. This is my understanding. Discrimination from your race, your color, your nationality, your gender, your disability. But Trump also whip out that stop, cancel, do not do that, meaning that there is no protection. You can discriminate everyone. This is a strong message of what? This is a question. Secondly, there is an executive order called Defending Women from Gender Ideology, Extremism, and Restoring Biological Truth to the federal government. I think this is a manifesto of binary and biological gender ideology. This heavily target on trans people. If you read through that executive order, it eliminates the existence of the transgender, meaning that it's, let's say, state and highlight the value and the meaning, the existing of the binary biological gender, which is only men and women biologically. This affects a lot to transgender people caught in the USA. Transgender women can be forced to men prison. Trans youth will not get the hormone treatment. And even the very last sentence of this order saying that the government will recognize only two gender, two sex based on biological sex. This eliminate existence of me, my friend, intersex friend, non-binary friend, a lot of trans men and trans women, trans non-binary friend. This is very crucial for us, every one of us, because I tried to do some research on it, and I found a very good article from the UN on this is a part of anti-gender movement. What is anti-gender movement? When feminists, when women realize they have rights, when LGBT people demand for their rights, from my perspective, that when the start of the anti-gender movement start. With on the paper saying it's 1990, around that. And then it's a structural movement, consists of the activity movement, power of the government, religious institution, and also NGO. On the report showing that a lot of funds are from US. And if we read through it easy, Google, read through, the anti-gender movement happened in the past a lot over the past 5 years. In the UK, they stopped hormone treatment for trans youth. In Poland, in Hungary, in Brazil. It might be the policy that the right wing used to win election. It might be the policy to be a champion or a leader of cis people. What I want to highlight here is that, you know what? I think you know, Trump used to own Miss Universe pageant, right? And he was the one who allowed transgender to compete on that pageant. What is it telling you? I don't believe he hates trans people, he transphobia. But what he did, it executive order, this manifesto is to announce for the audience, his audience. I want to move to the last, yes, it's the solution I list here. First of all, we need, as an organization, I'm running even small org with lower than 100K USD per year. We have to think about how to be rely on ourselves, diversify sort of fund. This is a key. Try to find internal resources. My org prepare for applying tax benefit once tax credit. Once Thai people or anyone, Thai people donate to our org, they will get tax credit when they pay the tax. This would take us 4 years, but we start today. We will start already. And then I will tell you, to be honest, the organization who get fund from USAID, we call big organization. Grassroots one don't have that capacity. I run also small group, transman group. We never get funds 5 years because we don't know how to write proposal. We don't have financial capacity. We don't understand the audit system. So there are many small group, more than 100 group in Thailand, LGBTI in Thailand that didn't register. We discussed on how we could survive in the next phase of the movement is to unite together as a union or consortium, try to pool resources, or even try to mobilize resources from volunteers, or even try to create or find new model by getting fund from our friend, 1 baht, 5 baht, 10 baht, or any prompt pay or donate from credit card, debit card, which is actually also highlight on it happened already in the youth movement. So this is how we think we're gonna survive. To be honest, for me, the budget cut is very hard, but I talked to my team, but we still want to do it. We will resist this kind of wrong order. We will continue to do the right thing. This is how I think this is a time for many of people. If you're non-LGBT now, you're facing the same thing that we are facing, and we should unite and find a solution together on how we could tackle. And this will happen next 4 years. I think in US will not have coup d'etat like in Thailand, right? So we have to prepare. We have to prepare, and I would think this space is a very good start for us, for everyone to rethink and to reshape our future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Toto, for your sharings. We have a bit of time left, I think, for some questions. I would like to invite all the panelists, if you could maybe come to the front. I think there are chairs for you, and we can take a couple of questions before we end. Okay, so let's get this going. I'm going to try and bunch your questions up into groups of 3, just because we're running short on time. But if you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand. Just quickly state your name and yeah, fire away. No questions. Okay, it's over then.
All right, I'm thinking about how to ask this. First of all, thank you for imparting all your wisdom. I want to thank the grassroots representatives in particular, because you truly do so much and your resistance is very inspiring. And I think I forgot who mentioned, apologies, one of the strategies that you've been thinking about is building solidarity within the grassroots community. And I think that will be the resistance and then coming together is super important. So I guess it ties to I have 2 questions, but they're kind of related to strategy in terms of how to move forward. You mentioned crowdfunding, but within local benefactors. So I'm assuming the elites of the local area. What strategies perhaps have you learned, have worked, or are hoping can work in future? And I think also a lot of people mentioned that we try to do capacity building so much. I would argue sometimes maybe we should shift to the idea that there's a lack of capacity within the elite for empathizing with the grassroots. So maybe that could be how we flip the script a little bit. So I guess, yeah, my answer is to do with solidarity. How is everyone envisioning creating that within the grassroots, I guess, horizontally? And also, how do we bring that education to people without the capacity to empathize currently? Sorry, that was a very long question.
Yeah, question on building solidarity at grassroots. I think there's a few here could speak about it. I think we've spoken about it slightly. Perhaps, yeah, sure. Yeah.
About the crowdfunding, the issue of beneficiaries and crowdfunding, I think it's right what was said before, that in Southeast Asia still the use of platform and electronic means to do crowdfunding is not as well working as in other regions of the world. There is still the personal. So a crowdfunding and a personal level of meeting people and interacting, this is a little bit how Junction also has been functioning in terms of, in the beginning was peer group. So we came together 30 people and we put $3,000 each. And then from this, we start as capital of Junction. But later on was also in terms of individual asking every event, even 10 baht, 20 baht, 30 baht, educating the public about, so not charging fee, but educating about contributing to a common space, as well as later on when we had to construct, we did the call and people reacted to. So there are ways in which knowing you is important for Southeast Asia. The anonymous crowdfunding still doesn't work as well. It works well for disease. Let's say someone is sick and posts a photograph of this is the kind GoFundMe, etc. So for disease, immediate response, relief, disaster. This is the traditional way of crowdfunding. Work for this kind of thing. It works less for development long term, but there is where the education and where is very important. And I think that is, and at the moment, it's also important to combine with a personal element of not only trusting on electronic means, but it can be done. It can be done.
So I'm going to answer to the question about solidarity. So Gina works like Manushya. So I think she knows what I'm going to say, but I think she wants to hear also from others. I think for solidarity, we have what we call the 4 Ds of solidarity, you know. And for us, the first D, it's about difference. It's really important, and when people, there's a need for us to come together and stand in solidarity, but there's a need for difference and differing the power to those who are on the front lines, differing the power to those who are the most impacted. They're the ones who need to tell you what type of solidarity they want. And they're the ones, those who are the most impacted by USAID funding cuts are the grassroots, or the people on the ground. They're the ones who not just asking them to fill out surveys, but actually asking them, how do you want us to help you? And I think our friends already said, we want core funding. Like we don't want to, we want the system to change overall, but the first thing is difference. You need to defer the power to those who are on the front lines, and we need to stop having experts telling us what should be the next step for USAID funding cuts. Because actually the people on the ground, we are the experts. The second point is differences. It's really important for us to embrace differences. And that's what the Trump administration is not doing, right? And that's why they are dividing the people. It's really important for us to accept differences. So although, you know, like we started the panel with people from the global minority, and then we see what's happening on the ground, and you have the people from the global majority speaking. Okay, that's embracing differences. But the best way for us to embrace differences is that embrace differences, but keep putting the people on the front line first. Like keep putting difference first. It's so, so important. So embracing differences. And the third point for us is also to be okay with disagreement. We are not always going to agree. And I'm sure many people, when they hear me speaking, they don't necessarily agree, because what I can say might be uncomfortable if you are working for an American NGO. It might be uncomfortable if you're coming from the global minority. I'm still going to say it, you know, because I think it's time for us to stop being scared of speaking up. For years, we have been scared of speaking up, and look at now. So it's really important for us to agree to disagree, but always go back to differences. We can agree to disagree, but you still need to defer the power to those who are on the front lines and on the ground. And the last one is decolonial. I know that it's weird to talk about decolonization in Thailand, because Thailand has not been colonized, but there is colonized mindsets. The way that funding has been working for generation and decades, it's because of colonized mindset. And there are more and more people speaking about the need to decolonize. There are more and more people talking about the need to have decolonial approaches. And it's not because we are not operating countries that have been colonized that we cannot talk about decolonization. I mean, I'm coming from a country that has been colonized. You know, Laos, I'm a former Lao political refugee. And the reason why my family resettled in France is because of colonization. And I think it's really important for us to understand that our generation and the generation to come are talking more and more about the colonial approach and are talking more and more about the colonization. So really the importance to defer the power to those on the front lines, to embrace differences, to agree to disagree, to adopt a decolonial approach, but always coming back to differences. Thank you.
I would like to say a part of the USAID Fritz, everyone celebrate with marriage equality this year for Thailand, right? Yes. But the funding for LGBTI will be decreasing because of the struggling, one of the struggle of LGBTI has gone. Apart from the pink economy booming, because a lot of people see that, oh, Thailand, visibility high, legal protection high. So we have seen, we predict already that will be happen. The fund will be decreasing, especially for LGBTI. So many orgs already prepare. Some orgs register a social enterprise company already. They prepare to set a part of their org to do commercializing or working CHR with some corporates. Some of the org hosting an event, which is fun events, selling ticket. This happened already before the USAID. For me, for my own org, grassroots one, or for my unregistered org, my friends in the community, I think we have to do the research. What kind of the model that fit to us? Because this kind of activity require a lot of effort, knowledge, expertise, operation, seed funding. It's totally different mindset on how we run the project. This is what I have learned from trying to gather information from our friends. It's different way of talking. You know, I want to sell the sponsorship packets. It's totally different when we say what kind of activity we have done and value for the community. It's totally different mindset. So I think the way to survive in the next phase of the movement need to be more strategized on who we are, how we're going to work on this kind of model of, let's say, the model to get the income or donation will be fit with your org or not. I will leave it as an, something that we need to develop in near future. But for my org, I see that we might go with the tax creating capacity to apply to be the foundation that could get tax benefit first. And we have a strategic funders, which is a private foundation in the US that provide co-funding to us. But it's still a 1-year contract. This is also the problem that we cannot secure yet the long-term contract, which is meaning insecurity in terms of finance in the next couple of years. So that's why I would be the one who responsible to find the strategy for my org. That's why it's come up with the union thing. It's come up with the crowdfunding things. We have to look in the model and pick the one that we fit with us and we can process it. Otherwise, we have to find a partner or try to gather in the group to work together. Yes.
There's the one question that didn't get answered is talking about changing elite attitudes. I used to work for Human Rights Watch, and Human Rights Watch doesn't take any money from governments. What they do is they manage to fundraise across the world from mostly fairly rich individuals. And what we found actually in terms of looking at Southeast Asia is it was very difficult for us to find rich individuals in Asia who, one, were prepared to donate to a human rights organization, and two, were people who we wanted to take their money, because a lot of them, in fact, were involved in all sorts of dirty businesses, whether it be mining or what have you. They might have disreputable reputations, what have you. I mean, I do remember at one point we had a very senior Indonesian who offered us $350,000. Yeah, Prabowo's brother, which we said no, thank you. But I mean, it's very, very difficult to change these elite attitudes in terms of trying to promote funding for organizations that try to take care of marginalized groups or try to take care of the sort of the social welfare or improve. I mean, what we usually get is elites who want to like support the school that they came from, you know, and they're prepared to build a new building or do something like that where they can stand out front and have their photo taken. Excuse me. Yeah, you said no, no answer. I did. It's not close, but now it is. It wasn't USAID calling, I don't think. In any case, I mean, the problem is that we've not seen any sort of degree of flexibility amongst elite or wealthy people in many of the Southeast Asian countries. Here, I'm going to.
Thank you. I think the most difficult for us when we talk about the elite is because you cannot talk about the elite without talking about the class system in our region. We are in a region where the elite is very rich, the working class is actually poor, and the elite is very conservative, and there's racial discrimination, there's structural inequalities. The elite doesn't want the country to change. Right. Even when we fundraise for refugees, because when we had the USAID funding cuts happening to us, we had to let go of our safe houses. So it became a question of life and death for the people that we are protecting. And when we're doing the fundraising experiment, these are refugees with their families. When they dig about, but who are those people? They're political activists. They're democracy activists. So they're not giving the money. And I think it's even we have been fighting for years to change the mentality of the elite. I mean, we see what's happening in Thailand, coup after coup after coup after coup, whenever you are trying to change or to bring the elite down. And even the current people in power, they're still the elite. Even the most progressive party is still run by elites. So I think but elites with the right mindset. So I think it's really difficult when we talk about changing the mindset of elites, because it means that you need to talk about class system, you need to talk about racial discrimination, and you need to talk about the mobilization of the working class. That is critical if you want to change the mindsets.
If I may add, I think there are two issues related to this. One is indeed the strategy is going after the high net worth individual or going after the kind of people like us who have some additional funding that can afford to share and do more peer activity, like women group, women funds. They have been started. Women putting their money together for advocating causes that they feel particularly connected to. And you can do at different levels. So the strategy can be different. The crowdfunding can be at the level of 5 baht, 10 baht, but you need to have the capacity to reach a very large amount of people. The second issue is the ecosystem. In the US, people donate because they can get tax deductions. It's not necessarily generosity. If I am Bill Gates, it's better for me to give to the foundation than not leave it to my children, because my children will have to pay so much taxes that my capital goes down. So there are these incentives that in Southeast Asia, unfortunately, don't exist. Yeah. I mean, he's talking about trying to become a charitable. We are also a foundation, a Thai foundation, but we don't have charitable status. The one with charitable status in Thailand are very few organizations, mostly royal foundations, which get immediately the charitable status, But for organizations like us, it's quite difficult to get the charitable status, even if we are non-profit. So the whole environment for philanthropy and giving that stimulate not necessarily generosity, but giving, that is very important. And there is where advocacy for that environment come. And then, of course, eliminate all the restriction by government, eliminate the restriction by, so there is a lot of homework to be done. But I think understanding the fundings ecosystem is extremely important in this time, because we are going towards a time in which there will be less resources, particularly for critical NGOs. So the best is to prepare ourselves by understanding and then devising possible strategy, which indeed need to be multiple strategies and not just only one strategy.
Thank you. I think Toto has a quick input.
Yes. I met one new donor, which is I asked him that, you know what my ask for me now is, my ask for my org now is not about funding, but can you help me understand the philanthropy ecosystem in the US and Canada and how we can replicate it in Asia? This is my question. And you say, oh, Toto, we can talk later. It's like a long story. And then apart from that, apply to be charitable foundation in Thailand is very difficult. There's require a lot of preparation. It would take you 4 years, but it can do.
Thank you, Toto. We have a question from the back. Can I just quickly get a show of hands for any more questions? Because I know we're 15 minutes past time and I just want to kind of group maybe a last round of questions, even though this is only second round. Okay, no hands, yeah, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all the panelists for such an insightful knowledge and experiences. I am a local artist and I'm also an art lecturer. So let me chat to you about the art scene a little bit. This is the Thailand. There has been struggles that most artists in Thailand, they're very focused on the skills. They don't have the content, they don't have the experiences about the world, culture, and things like that. I've been teaching my students for quite a few years, and what I learned is that sometimes the very rich students of mine, they care about society and they don't have the access to your information. So I see the opportunity that could be a collaboration. At the moment in the world, there are so many art funds, cultural fund in Thailand and outside Thailand, coming from Germany, coming from government of, let's say, European, even in Japan, and they care for society like this. So I think it could be an opportunity as well that if we don't go through US funding, could we go through the art channel? Could we go through cultural channel? If we are on that, last term, I taught in Thammasat social impact art. And my students from international class, they love it, they enjoy it. And they study Burmese culture, they went to do LGBT, they went to study environmental issue just to go deep in it, really deep, just to have exhibitions. Could things like this happen and we go through different routes to find the fundings? That's my question, because I don't know. That's my question to you. Second thing is that all the elites that I know, they love art. They buy art. They would spend millions in art. They would collect arts. If we manage to sell social impact art to these elites and fund the organization, is it possible? My big question, because sometimes the friend that I know, they sold the whole building of arts, 10 million baht at one go, and it felt nothing to them. I'm throwing out the question. It could sound dreamy, but it could come true in my mind, because I live in this country for quite a while, and I kind of guess that it could happen. Maybe 1% of the chance, but yeah, that's my question. That's all.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyone on the panel interested? Emilie.
No, thank you. You're giving us a lot of ideas, you know. We're definitely going to explore. I want to shout out to Ivana, who is in the room. She's a engaged artist, an amazing agile artist from Indonesia. We worked a lot together. A lot of illustration you can see on Manushya publications. It's from Ivana. So a very, very important work, very impactful work. And that's true. We don't speak enough about the artists, but also being impacted by the USAID funding cuts. Yeah. But yeah, amazing ideas, and we are going to explore that channel of arts, because we do work a lot with engaged artists, and a lot of them from the Military Alliance as well, that we're working with them, and we can no longer work with them because we cannot pay them. So, but thank you for giving us these tips, really, thank you.
I mean, I think that I think there's a lack of cross-fertilization in a lot of different sectors in Thailand in particular, but across different parts of Asia as well. That, I mean, I'm not surprised to find that, in fact, artists have been successful in fundraising for themselves, and might have money, but they don't know about NGOs that they might want to support. It doesn't surprise me at all. I will say there's, in terms of like other strategies, one of the issues that I wanted to raise is, there's always been discussions, and I know this from when I was working many years ago at more than 20 years ago at PDA, Population Community Development Association, that they always had a for-profit orientation where they were getting money from donors, but they were also looking at having sustainability in terms of raising their money and making money. And that led to, in fact, a number of different conflicts with the actual work and the fundraising versus the nonprofit side. But I would also note that, the Thai government is very strict in saying that Thai international NGOs operating in Thailand cannot have a for-profit activity at all. And I remember actually one international NGO that inadvertently had done some for-profit work. They'd gotten some money and basically done some things, and they almost lost their registration because of it through the Ministry of Labor's committee. So, I mean, what we see is that, many of these governments also in the local area want to keep everybody in their own box. They don't want the sort of cross-fertilization or solidarity between necessary social sectors. And so we, to a certain extent, have to do our extra work to try to break those down if we're going to actually have some sustainable funding mechanisms.
Well, I think there are two issues. One issue is a political fight, right? I mean, this is a political fight. They are closing development aid, a right-wing movement who are doing this. It fits well with their ideology. They are looking for the weakest groups to attack, the diverse people, which is very convenient. But of course, they're attacking also Black and women, and while talking about transgender. So one part of our effort needs to be a political countering of this movement, wherever we come from. Italy is unfortunately also under the influence of such movement, and that needs to be done, because that is what will change then the value about and the appreciation of development aid. It's not a coincidence that wherever there is a conservative government, development aid is attacked. So if we see like that, then of course this needs to be done at that. The second is a more practical preoccupation of how we can raise resources and survive in this climate. So I think I would like to see international organization taking a much stronger position on what is happening than what we have seen up to today. Hopefully is coming. So far they are so preoccupied about their own surviving that they have not made a very collective position, which would be very helpful. And maybe we also need to do a collective position at the level of the region as we operate. But on the practical level, yeah, there are many strategies: selling of artwork, fundraising, fun party. Of course, there can be all kind of strategy, but we need to see how much money you invest into doing that and how much money you gain by doing that, because often many of these events, you don't make too much money out of it, although they are fun and they can create a community. So there are many strategies that can be studied, but I think that is more at the pragmatic level. And for sure, they cannot substitute for USAID or other bilateral donors. I mean, that are major donors with very large amount of funding. So we need also to be realistic about For organization like us, we can make it, but for other organizations, they may not be able to, or not be enough to survive.
Thank you very much. I think we're just about at closing time, but just before we leave, can we get a round of appreciation for the panelists today? Okay. And I'm being told by Leah that you kind of skipped the donation boxes. I think there are both exits, so yeah. We'll take your name that's down. But just before we leave, a quick, very quick concluding remark, I think, from myself and having the privilege of moderating these great panelists. I think really what we are seeing with the USAID funding cuts, but with where development is going overall, I mean, it simply reflects, I think, the broader shift of global politics. It doesn't really lie. It's one which is going on the rightward path. It's neoliberalism on steroids. It's increasingly top-down, and where decisions are taken based on, as I mentioned before, political expediency rather than any type of robust scientific evidence. This moment calls us to really look at the bigger picture, I think. The real challenge rather, isn't just about adjusting to less funding. It's about questioning the ideas that justifies these cuts in the first place, but also the ideas that underpin, I think, development, as Emilie mentioned. So I think we don't talk enough about colonization. We don't talk about, colonial capitalism, for that matter of fact. So it'd be great to pick your brains and to have something else on this topic in the future. And I think finally, the question we face, as I mentioned, is a political one. Will development continue to serve those in power? Or can we reclaim this space as a space for real praxis and liberation? Thank you very much. But there's also coffee and tea outside after you donate. No coffee or tea if you don't donate.